Let me ask you something, and I need you to be honest with yourself when you answer it. When your phone rings, do you actually look forward to picking it up? Or do you look down at that screen, see a name you recognize, somebody you genuinely love, and still let it go to voicemail? And then you sit in the quiet of your own home, maybe with the TV on low just for background noise, and you think to yourself, I should call them back. But you don't. Not tonight, maybe not this week. If that is you, and I mean really you, I need you to stay right here. Because what you are feeling is not rudeness. It is not you being antisocial. And it is absolutely not the beginning of some sad cautionary story about getting old and bitter. What you are experiencing has a name. It has roots. It has history. And by the time this video is over, you are going to understand yourself in a way that nobody, not your mama, not your closest girlfriend, not your doctor, not your pastor, ever sat down and took the time to explain to you. I'm Sasha, and today we are going all the way in on the psychology of older Black Gen X women who live alone. Now, before we get into the 5 layers of what is really happening emotionally, psychologically, and even financially when a Black woman of our generation is living alone, I want to make you one promise. I'm going to get to the part that nobody talks about, the part where living alone as a Black Gen X woman is connected to something that was wired into us decades before we ever even heard the word boundaries. And I promise you, once you hear it said out loud, everything is going to click. Everything is going to make sense in a way that might actually bring you some relief. But we start at the beginning. You were born somewhere between 1965 and 1980. You are, right now, somewhere in your late 40s, your 50s, or you are standing right at the edge of 60. And you came up in a time, a very specific, very particular American time, when Black women were simply not permitted the luxury of falling apart. You watched your mother work herself to nothing. You watched your aunties hold entire families together with nothing but faith, fried chicken, and an iron will. You were told, not always with words, sometimes just by watching, by absorbing, that your strength was the gift, that needing people was weakness, that emotions were something you processed quietly, alone, after everyone else had been taken care of, and you internalized all of it. You became the dependable one, the one who always showed up, the one who answered the 2 a.m. phone calls, the one who drove people to appointments, lent money that never came back, gave advice that got ignored, and smiled through all of it because that is what strong Black women do, right? And then on top of all of that, Gen X as a whole got labeled the forgotten generation, sandwiched between boomers who got all the nostalgia and millennials who got all the cultural think pieces. But for Black Gen X women specifically, the forgetting ran even deeper. Nobody made a coming-of-age movie about your life. Nobody studied your stress levels. Nobody held a conference about your retirement readiness. Nobody asked how you were doing after you finished holding everybody else up. So is it really any surprise that at some point, you just stopped picking up the phone? Here is where it gets interesting. Because living alone as a Black Gen X woman is not one simple experience. It is layered. And I want to walk through every single layer with you. The first layer is what psychologists call strategic withdrawal. This is what happens when a woman, after years, sometimes decades, of being the emotional infrastructure for everyone around her, begins to pull back. Not because she hates people, not because something went wrong with her, but because she has been running on empty for so long that solitude becomes the only place she can actually refuel. Think about it like this. Remember what summer felt like when you were a little girl? I mean, really felt like. No schedules, no obligations. That golden late afternoon hour when the whole neighborhood was alive. Kids on bikes, somebody's radio playing through a screen door, the smell of something good cooking a few houses down, and not a single worry in the world that couldn't wait until tomorrow. That ease, that specific feeling of being completely unhurried and completely yourself. Your nervous system, your actual exhausted, overstretched nervous system, is still looking for that feeling, 40 years later. And the quiet of your own apartment, your own house, your own space, that is the closest thing adult life has offered you to it. That is not a problem to be solved. That is wisdom in action. Now I have 5 layers to walk you through, and I need you to stay with me. Because layer 3, the one I'm going to get to in a few minutes, is the one that trips Black Gen X women up the most. It is the one that quietly affects your health, your relationships, your finances, and your sense of future. So do not go anywhere. Layer 2 is grief. And I am not talking only about the grief of losing people, though Lord knows many of us have carried more of that than any one person should. I am talking about ambient grief, the kind that does not announce itself with a funeral. The grief of a life that did not unfold the way you imagined it would when you were 23. The grief of a marriage that ended or never started. The grief of children who grew up and got busy with their own lives. The grief of friendships that simply faded, not because of any argument or falling out, but because life pulled everybody in different directions and nobody found the time to pull back together. And here is the truth about grief in Black women that nobody talks about at the level it deserves. We were never given permission to have it. We were expected to bounce back, to keep moving, to be strong for whoever needed us to be strong. So most of us did exactly that. We kept moving, we kept functioning, we showed up, we handled it. But grief does not disappear because you refuse to look at it. It goes somewhere. It settles into the body. It shows up as a short fuse, getting snapped at something small and wondering why you reacted so hard. It shows up as chronic fatigue, as a bone-deep tiredness that a full night of sleep simply does not fix, as a creeping, low-level sadness on Sunday evenings that you cannot quite name. Does any of that sound familiar? That is not you getting old and difficult. That is unprocessed grief looking for an exit door. And the fact that you are living alone right now, it might actually be the first time in your adult life that you have the space, the real, physical, emotional breathing room to finally feel it. Layer 3, the one I told you to stay for. Black Gen X women have one of the most complicated relationships with independence of any demographic group in this country. And I want to be precise about why. On one side, independence is a source of enormous, hard-earned pride. You figured it out. You made it work with what you had. You did not wait for anyone to rescue you, and you built something. That pride is real, and it is rightfully yours. But here's the other side, and this is the part that costs us. When independence becomes armor, it starts to keep out the good things too. What the research consistently shows, and I will say this plainly, Black women who grew up in the 70s and 80s were socialized to treat vulnerability as dangerous. Not because of some internal character flaw, but because in many of the environments we were raised in, vulnerability had real, concrete consequences. If you showed softness, people took advantage. If you admitted you were struggling, it was used against you. If you let someone in, they eventually left, or judged you, or both. So the armor went on early. Some of us were in elementary school when we first learned to go quiet about the things that hurt us. And now, 30 and 40 years later, that armor is still there, fused, familiar, and so normalized that we mistake it for our actual personality. We live alone, some of us, not because we truly want to be alone forever, but because we genuinely, honestly, do not know how to let people close without bracing for the impact of disappointment. And that is not a small thing. That deserves to be said out loud. That deserves to be sat with. Now let us talk practically, because this video would not be complete if we did not address the financial reality that is sitting quietly underneath a lot of what we have been discussing. Many Black Gen X women who are living alone right now are also navigating retirement, either approaching it with anxiety, having recently entered it with uncertainty, or trying to figure out how to sustain a life on a single income when they were always the one person who never prioritized their own financial future. The wealth gap is real. The retirement savings gap is real. And for a woman who spent her prime earning years, her 40s, her early 50s, absorbing the financial shocks of a household, supporting adult children, helping aging parents, sometimes all at once, the road to a secure retirement can look terrifyingly unclear. Here is what I need you to hear. You are not behind because you were irresponsible. You are not behind because you made dumb choices. You are behind, if you are behind, because you were operating inside a system that was never designed to account for everything you were asked to carry. Recognizing that is not an excuse. It is a starting point. Because once you stop treating your financial anxiety as a moral failing, you can actually start addressing it like the practical, solvable set of problems it mostly is. Catch-up contribution limits for women over 50, Social Security optimization strategies for single women, housing equity options, community-based financial planning resources created specifically for Black women in this age group. These tools exist, and we are going to walk through them in dedicated videos coming to this channel very soon. But today, right now, just stop punishing yourself for the gap. That is step 1. Layer 4. And this is the one I want you to hold on to. There is something extraordinary that starts to happen when a Black Gen X woman fully settles into living alone. When she stops apologizing for it, when she stops scanning her life against some invisible checklist of what her life was supposed to look like by now, when she releases the comparison, when she just lets herself be where she is. She starts to hear herself again. Not the version of herself that her family needs at the cookout, not the version her workplace requires, not the version that shows up with everything held together and a smile that costs her more than anyone knows. Her actual self. The woman who knows exactly what she wants for Saturday morning breakfast. The woman who has a whole internal life, opinions, preferences, interests, ideas that she never got to act on because she was always attending to someone else's needs first. That reconnection is not emptiness. That is sovereignty. And for a generation of Black women who have been giving themselves away since before they were grown, sovereignty is not just peace. It is revolutionary. Layer 5. The distinction I want to leave you with. The one that matters most. There is a real important difference between solitude and loneliness. And learning to tell them apart might be one of the most useful things a Black Gen X woman living alone can do for herself. Solitude is a choice. It is restorative. It is the space where you return to yourself. Loneliness is something different. It is the feeling of being unseen, the feeling that you could disappear and the world would not really notice, that the people around you have moved on and you are somehow standing still, left behind. Both can exist at the same time. You can be thriving in your solitude on most days and still have a Tuesday evening or a holiday or a birthday where loneliness comes and quietly sits down beside you. And that is okay. You do not have to reach for your phone immediately to prove you're not sad. You do not have to perform wellness for anyone. But if loneliness has become the dominant experience, if the quiet stopped feeling like a relief and started feeling like a sentence, that is important information. That is your body and your spirit asking for something different. And it deserves to be listened to, not judged, not pushed down, listened to. So where do we go from here? If you recognize yourself in any part of this video, in the strategic withdrawal, in the grief that never had a funeral, in the independence that became armor, in the financial anxiety you have been carrying quietly, or even in that unexpected peace that showed up when you finally had your own space, I want you to take one thing with you when you leave. You are not broken. You are not behind. You are not the cautionary tale somebody else gets to tell about you. You are a Black woman who was handed a staggering amount of responsibility early in life inside a world that gave you very little in return, and you carried it. You kept going. You kept showing up, and you are still here. And here, in this season, Whether it looks exactly the way you planned or absolutely nothing like it, you still have choices. You still have voice. You still have time. Living alone does not have to mean living without. It can mean, for the very first time in your life, living fully, completely, on your own terms. If this video spoke to something in you, share it with the woman in your life who needs to hear it today. And subscribe to this channel, because honey, we are just getting started. I'm Sasha. I'll see you in the next one.